Democrats are not going to win elections if they don't have a strong talk radio media presence. Check it out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. At the top of the list is that there is a new article out in The Nation magazine, or at least on The Nation magazine's website, thenation.com, that just came out this morning. And it's titled, Talk Radio, Democrats Can't Win If They Don't Play. And it's by a guy you might be familiar with, me. But the subhead is the vast right-wing talk show network across the United States has enormous political sway, and Republican politicians know and embrace it. And, you know, a lot of it is stuff that you've heard from me before, and so I'm not going to, exhaustively go through it again, other than to point out that politics is a game that is typically played in terms of winning and losing elections on the margins. It's around the edges. If you can shave 2 or 3 points off your opponent by, say, for example, putting so few voting machines in your opponent's neighborhoods that people have to stand in line for 8 hours to vote, if that can discourage just 1 or 2 or 3% of the people from voting or cause them to quit the line and have to go back to work, you can win an election. Well, similar, and of course we all know this has been, a major Republican strategy for the better part of 40 years now, to make it particularly in black neighborhoods, in Hispanic neighborhoods, in communities where you've got a lot of students, and in communities where there are a lot of very elderly people who might be voting Social Security and Medicare, typically Democratic issues. And so, that's what Republican voter suppression is all about. But the other main strategy that the Republican Party has been using in a big way since the mid-1990s, and Newt Gingrich was a real pioneer in this, in using talk radio this way, is talk radio, is right-wing talk radio all across the United States. There is literally not any part of the United States with any population of any consequence. I mean, you might have on some mountaintop in Utah where you can't, well, even there, you can get a radio signal. I genuinely believe there's no place in America where you cannot just turn on your car radio and tune across the dial and find right-wing hate radio. On the other hand, if you want progressive talk radio, if you want to hear, conversation about the issues from the point of view of the Democratic Party or from the point of view of progressives, good luck. I mean, there's some great stations in this country, but they are not in every city. They're not even in every blue state. We have entire blue states with no progressive radio stations. Sirius XM, the Progress Channel, God bless them. I mean, the holding the fort here. And I know, many of you, a large percentage of you are listening to me right now on Sirius XM, and we are so grateful for that clearance. And Sirius XM has been expanding this now with they've got an app, and you can listen to them on the web, and you don't have to have a satellite receiver anymore unless you want it in your car. And if you have it in your car, of course, you can literally drive from coast to coast and never lose the signal. It's a pretty amazing thing. But with conservative talk radio, it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous. And if the Republican Party had to rent, they call it lease actually in the industry, but if they had to rent all the right-wing radio stations in America that run 24/7 right-wing talk radio, and in many cities, well, here in Portland, we've got 3 different right-wing stations. And they're big signals. In fact, the biggest signal in the state is a right-wing station. And so, if the Republican Party had to actually rent that time, it would cost them $5 billion a year. Now, the Democratic Party has stations, as I said, in a few cities. We've got, we're growing. And we've got a lot of nonprofit stations that are popping up, and Pacifica stations that are picking up more and more progressive talk and that kind of thing. But by and large, it's been right-wing media, and it's been right-wing media not because there's not an audience for left-wing talk. People say, well, when the article came out, in fact, I had a number of people on Twitter going, yeah, but Air America failed. Well, let's see. Air America was on 54 stations that they were renting or leasing or that they had cooperative barter agreements with with Clear Channel, what was then called the Clear Channel Radio Network. Clear Channel has over 800 radio stations all across the country. Mitt Romney's Bain Capital bought Clear Channel. Clear Channel then started dropping progressive talk from their stations all across the country. And surprise, surprise, in 5 years, Clear Channel was $17 million in debt. That was their bankruptcy, $17 million. Now, to put that in context, the first year that Rupert Murdoch ran Fox News, he lost $100 million. The second year that he ran Fox News, he lost $80 million. And according to Brit Hume, it was 5 years before he made $1 on Fox News. He lost several $100 million. Air America went bankrupt on $17 million. And much of that, yes, there was some, incompetent management. I'll give you that. Randy Rhoads and I were yelling about it at the time. But by and large, when you start losing radio stations and you depend on advertising revenue to stay in business, Mitt Romney killed the network, you could say. Now, that certainly wasn't the only thing that was going on, but, I've told you the story about meeting with the billionaire owner of one of the three big radio networks in the United States, over 700 radio stations, a good chunk of them carrying right-wing radio, and I said to him, would you put progressive radio on any of your stations? He had just bought the network that was syndicating my show. And he said, no, we're not going to put that on any of them. Zero. And I'm like, why? And he's like, well, because I'm not going to put people on the air who say that my taxes should go up. And then another time, there was another radio network, Salem Radio, that has Dennis Prager and Hugh Hewitt on it. And I was sitting next to one of their senior executives at a talkers luncheon. This was maybe a decade ago. And I said, hey, you ever thought about putting progressives on? And he says, no, it hurt our brand. Plus, we're a company that started out as a Bible publishing company. We only put real Christians on the air. And I'm like, I'm a real Christian. And he's like, no, you're not. You're a liberal. It wasn't, that's not a literal, this is my recollection of the conversation. I didn't write down every word he said. But that was the essence of what he said. So this isn't about progressive talk radio can't work. We have stations, we've got a channel on Sirius XM, we've got stations around the country where it does work. It's just that, basically since Reagan stopped enforcing the Sherman Act, you've got large swaths of the American radio infrastructure now owned by people who have right-wing agendas for various reasons. And what I'm saying is that Democrats need to start taking this seriously, that the Democratic Party should put together a talk radio caucus. Talk radio is how Dave Bratt took down Eric Cantor, the second or third most powerful politician in the House of Representatives, probably the fifth most powerful politician in the United States. Back in the day, that was talk radio that took him down. Talk radio was what killed the public option for Obamacare. Right-wing talk radio, by getting Scott Brown elected, a guy who nobody thought had a chance. And I lay all this out in the article. You can find it over at thenation.com right now. It's called Talk Radio. Democrats can't win if they don't play. And, I've tried to reach out to some of our wealthy donors and say, hey, why don't you invest in some radio stations? We have 1,500 right-wing radio stations in the United States, and probably fewer than 50 on the left. And a lot fewer than that if you're looking at commercial stations. And this is something that I think this is a big issue. So anyhow, there's that. You don't have to call about that. I just wanted to flag it for you. I wanted to sensitize it to you. There's also a new article out over at Vox.com about the long-term symptoms of COVID. And this is pretty damn shocking stuff.